Hi, this is Dr. Ken Long, and we're going to take a look at a mind map we're using to explore the problems and opportunity space of 3D printing with respect to the Army and civilian best practices. So, we've got a four-person semi independent research team that is examining, in general, the 3D printing opportunity as part of their University of Kansas Supply Chain Management Master's degree program. And these are Army officers that are studying evening classes in that discipline. This is an independent study elective from Command and General Staff College, where they're going to get some credit for some of the work that they're doing at KU, and then this will count as an elective credit for the additional work that they're going to do as part of this research group. So we're going to use a hub and spoke type approach in which they begin with a baseline document from a military Master of Art and Science thesis of a couple years ago from Chief Warrant Officer Dave Marriott, who examined the relationship between current Army supply chain management doctrine, emerging Army doctrine, and civilian best practices in a number of different industries that have similarities to Army supply chains, to see what it was that we could learn about what future policy needed to be. And this was preparing Dave for future assignments as a policy advisor to Department of Army. He did a really nice job on that, and we want to maintain the momentum and build on it. So we're using that as a foundational document to think about the relationship between civilian and military best practices and connect it to emerging theory. So this is a mind map that we did with the four officers to examine 3D printing and to say something sensible about it, and to organize their group work into something useful, but at the same time giving them flexibility to explore where they wanted to go based on their curiosity and interests. So we started off with the idea that this one-page ecosystem mind map would actually give us the opportunity to array visually in one page what was going on. So we're going to use this mind map to summarize the current state of nature with respect to 3D printing and allow us to see what we coined a term of art as lines of opportunity. Well, LLO means line of operation for the Army, but line of opportunity just seemed to fit. So we're going to look at those LOOs going forward at the same time, comparing what we can learn across the civil military cross-boundary border. So the problems, opportunities, best practices, and solutions we want to array on this time series. So we'll put the civilian problems, opportunities, best practices, and solutions along an axis of 3 time groups: today, tomorrow, and next week, by which I mean current best practices, opportunities that could manifest in the next 0 to 2 years, and then longer term, 2 to 5 years. Beyond 5 years is kind of much deeper opportunities and almost too fuzzy. We're looking for things that can be migrated into Army programs within the reasonable future, so we decided to cap it at 2 to 5 years and think of that as next week. So that's a scoping issue. We think probably civilian applications are going to be in advance of military, and so recognizing that, we still want to look at the boundaries to see what it is that the military can learn from the civilian best practices and what civilians can learn from the military. It may be that civilians learning from the military can help them with ideas for brainstorming that they can develop and deploy, may be of use to the military, but it may also give them insights into their civilian supply chains that they hadn't thought of before, particularly when it comes to scoping and risk and emergencies and natural disasters and so forth. On the military line, we're really looking for things that seem like low risk, high payoff military applications of what we can see in the civilian world. So collectively, that's the broad focus of those 2 lines of opportunity. In this array, every rectangle represents something that one of the four researchers is going to come across as they do their initial literature review to start scoping out the environment or the ecosystem. And it may be that one of those things becomes something that they really want to pursue deeper. So what we will array that as then is a collection of all the ideas and projects, opportunities, problems, challenges, and so forth that they found on either line of operation. And then they'll choose an individual project to go deeper to follow their interest. So that would be an individual line of inquiry located in the opportunity space for context. So what this array does is give us a broad sense of what's happening in the ecosystem, and then allows them to place their deeper focused research in the context of all the other things that are going on. So this will give the executive agent or the receiver of the briefing, whether it's an information briefing or a decision briefing, a sense of the broad context and to be able to place the opportunity in a setting. So here's an example of different kinds of things that could emerge. In each one of these time frames, there may be opportunities for crosstalk learning and collaboration broadly between the stakeholders on both the military and civilian side of the fence. This one represents, number one, something that we might discover that is immediately useful, that could be applied from civilian best practices almost immediately into military application. So that's a possibility for one kind of thing that we might discover and that our officers might explore. A second one might be something that's going on in the civilian world right now that looks like within the next 2 years could be fielded at least to a unit or a prototype or a pilot program. So it's something that we should explore with the idea of being able to immediately develop it. Number two looks like something that we may discover civilians are conducting promising research on something that it may take us 2 to 5 years to develop once the results come in. This might be premature to be able to commit to it now, but it may be something that allows us to think about adding a capability more deliberately in the 2 to 5 year time window. And then finally, there might be something that comes across from, say, basic research or just original thought experiments in the civilian world or academic world that seem like they could be truly revolutionary and might leapfrog us over all of the developments that are happening in the today, tomorrow, and next week. So maybe that's the next year conceptually. So each of the officers now is working to collaborate and integrate their insights into a rich description of the opportunity space. They'll produce a collaborative group elevator speech that lays out the dimensions of this, which we plan to use in curriculum for next year. And then each one will go a little bit deeper as they develop their further ideas. So this is what we mean by hub and spoke, starting with Dave Marriott's ideas on emerging best practices for supply chain management, placing 3D printing inside of that theory and practice, using this document sort of as a grounding operational view of the ecosystem, scoped out to about 5 years, and then divided into military and civilian best practices, and then using this to place their deeper spoke research into context. And we think at the end of this we'll have a nice package that goes selectively deep and broadly descriptive of 3D printing in the military perspective. So we plan to roll this out into future years depending on how this all shakes out, but it looks very promising so far. So thank you for your kind attention. It's Ken Long at Commando General Staff College.